Hi everybody, and welcome to another Armin's Tech Talk. Today we're talking about building your first PC. You know, many years ago, I had a friend. He taught me pretty much a lot of what I know today, and I thank him a lot for it because the world of building PCs has really been something special to me. But a lot of people have asked me, Armand, how do you go about doing this? And usually my first question is, well, what do you want to use it for? And my second question is, what is your budget? Because a budget is really important when it comes to building a PC. As many of you know, there's a range of PCs out there, all the way to the professional movie studio high end, all the way down to the $500 PC, which can outperform a game console, and everything in between. So when it comes to building a PC, usually what I try to tell everybody is know what you want it for, know what your budget is, and then we can kind of go from there. If we want to dig down into the specifics, the major things to really be aware of is what chip you have and what motherboard you have, because certain chips only work in certain motherboards. Now, for those who have built PCs before, that seems like it's a given, but not everybody thinks about it. And of course, with the advent of AMD taking over some of Intel's naming schemes, for some people it might actually be confusing. So with Intel right now, the mainstream parts are socket 1151. Now, these consist of the Z370 chipset motherboards, the eventual and soon to announce / release Z390 motherboards. You will also have some 350. Those will be in the H-class motherboards, and they're all from multiple vendors, Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, and so on and so forth. Now, on the other side, you have AMD's Ryzen. These chips operate on the AM4 socket. So this is going to be your Ryzen 3, 5, 7. And their naming schemes, of course, are a little bit different. They have chosen the X and the B monikers for their chipsets. So X470, B450, and so on. And if you're looking at the higher end chips, so the more enthusiast level, you're looking at X399 and X299. X399 being the TR4 socket, which is AMD's Threadripper, and X299 being Intel's socket, the Skylake X and Kaby Lake X chipsets, the 7000 series HEDT parts. Those are on socket 2066. Yeah, 2066. So it's very important that your chip match your motherboard, otherwise it's not going to work. So along with that, let's talk about motherboards and cases. Cases come in multiple sizes, from mini E-ATX all the way up to E-ATX super towers and beyond. Really, there is a good portioning, but everybody's different. My ideal portioning of a motherboard to a chassis is maybe not yours. But what I will normally tell people is that you just want to make sure that your case isn't too small for your motherboard. You can't, of course, cram something like that into a case. And on the flip side, you don't want to put something that's this tiny into something that's this large. So it's something to be aware of. If you're going to go E-ATX, XL-ATX, and of course I'm going to recommend a super tower, but that's completely up to you on what size case you guys want to take out there. And of course there's multiple cases, once again, from multiple vendors. Maybe it's important to you, maybe it's not, but each case, of course, does have its own front input output. So this is your USB ports, whether it's 2.0, 3.1, 3.1 Gen 2. That's something maybe you want to consider when you're looking at the features of your motherboard. Moving on, we have DDR. Now, in most cases at this point, DDR4 is the current standard used by most motherboards. Unless you're looking at something older, it should be DDR4, and most DIMMs sticks will work in most motherboards. If you're using an older motherboard, there is potential that it could be DDR3, and you're going to want to check with the board manufacturer before you do that. Now, by older, I'm thinking about anything that is pre 2014. You might want to just double check to make sure that you're getting the right stuff. With PSUs, now, this is, once again, a little bit of a challenge in that it depends upon, what your purpose is. How big of a PSU do you need? Now, I will say you don't need the gold and platinum titanium certification power supplies that cost a little bit more. They're just a little more efficient. You can go with a silver. I mean, in some cases you can even go with a bronze. It really depends on the manufacturer when you get down in the certifications. But I would say a silver is a good, safe place. Once again, my personal preference for power supplies is start around the 850 watt range. And the reason for this is that this may not be your only PC build throughout time. You may go on to build others. Now, with that being said, of course, is if you do decide to go on and build other PCs, you can take some of these parts forward. They may cost you a little bit more now, but they could save you a whole lot later. Optical drives at this point, that's really a personal preference, as is RGB LEDs. Some people love them, some people don't. Going back to the optical drives just for a moment, some cases will support an optical drive, some of them won't at this point, because you can get most programs on a USB stick, or you can download them from a website. Even Windows OS at this point you can buy on Amazon for $119 on USB. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you have a lot of legacy software out there, you may want to consider an external Blu-ray drive or an external DVD drive that plugs in via USB. Last but not least, let's talk about storage. And I think storage and graphics cards are pretty important. Now, the storage, you can swap things in out, but maybe you have a lot of files, maybe you're doing more than just gaming. I would recommend a SSD for the OS drive. The other day on Amazon, there was a 1 terabyte Samsung 860 EVO for $198. Maybe that's out of your budget. If it is, of course, there are other drives. There are smaller drives, which of course are always cheaper. And you also have the hybrid drives, which is a old-fashioned platter drive with a little bit of solid-state cache on it to help the drive along. Usually I'd use those types of hybrid drives more for mass storage, and either a cheaper M.2 or a SSD, SATA SSD, for the OS drive. That way your boots don't take too long and the system's pretty snappy. And we love snappy. Brings us to the GPU, last but not least, and maybe the most important piece of them all. The GPU is pretty much your eyes, just like the CPU is your brain and the PSU is your heart of the system. The GPU, if you're primarily gaming, is probably the thing that you want to put a little extra money into. And once again, this is also going to depend upon your monitor setup. If you're running 1080p, then you don't need the cream of the crop. But if you're going to push for 1440, 4K, at that point, maybe you want to consider a 1060, 1070. I mean, maybe you want to go all out and you're really an enthusiast and you want the latest and greatest, then you're possibly going for a 2080 or a 2080 Ti. When it comes to putting a PC together, I would say the GPU is one of your more important pieces, and at the same time, I would also say that if you build a PC more on the cheap, then the GPU in your next go around might be the first thing that you want to upgrade, especially if you're a gamer. So that's kind of my take on building a PC. I'm going to put a link in the description below for PC Part Picker to give you guys a little more information out there. Of course, do feel free to ask questions in the comments. I will be in and out of them to see what you guys have to say. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. And I want to thank you guys for watching, and happy PC building out there. Let me know how it goes, and I will see you all in the next video.